Welcome to Friday 15. Bear with me as we rock out. This is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Moore, my partner at Master B2B Series. And we are less than 1 week away from our summit in Chicago. We're excited about that one, Andy. We'll talk a little more about that later, but welcome everyone to Friday 15 with Master B2B. We got an exciting topic today we're going to be diving into. Andy's having to do with some of your research in solving the site search problem that most B2B companies have. We'll talk about that. But before we get into all this, let's do breaking news. Andy, tariffs everywhere. What is going on? Uncertainty about tariffs is overhanging the economy. What are people doing? I'm talking to this, folks every day. B2B companies are confused. They're not sure what to do. What's your take on this?
Well, over on the right-hand side on the screen there, it has 3 stories in the Wall Street Journal. And one of them says, market goes up based on tariff discussion. The other one says, market goes down based on tariff discussion. And the last one goes, market goes up based on tariff discussion. So who knows? I mean, the point of this is that there's such uncertainty around this. And this shows a little bit of a timeline, right? So February 1st, tariffs start. Then they're paused on February 3rd. Then they're reinitiated again on February 4th. And then there's some exceptions made, and then there's a new initiation of it. And you're getting the point here is that it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, which is fine. I mean, this is not a political discussion, but companies like distributors and manufacturers are trying to figure out what the pricing is going to look like. I mean, they import a lot of stuff, they export a lot of stuff. And if they don't know what the prices are going to, this is the death of business activity, right? It's risk. And this introduces risk. I'm putting aside effectiveness. This is about a risk thing. And what happens is, is when businesses see risk, they freeze.
Yeah, it's true. I was talking to a senior person at a plumbing manufacturer this morning, large company, and she told me that they're actually moving 3 factories. They're literally moving 3 factories out of certain markets in Asia, China in particular, because they want to avoid this uncertainty. They're looking at sourcing back in the United States, looking at Mexico, other places. So anyway, fascinating. We'll continue to keep our eye on that. We don't have a crystal ball on this, folks, but you're not alone if you're trying to figure out how to deal with it. So our topic today: how effective would you rate the site search on your B2B e-com site? Andy, today we're going to attempt to demystify the site search challenge companies have with a fantastic tool. I am promoting you here, Mr. Hoare. Fantastic. I am. Fantastic tool that Andy just put out through his Paradigm B2B. But, why is this an issue? Well, number one, we asked our community, how effective do you rate the site search on your B2B e-com website? Guess what? Almost 3/4 said it's not that effective. Only 26% said it's really effective. It's great. 33% said somewhat effective. 22% said meets basic needs, and almost 20% said it's not effective at all. All right. So we have some work to do, industry. This is particularly true amongst, very large distributors, for example, Andy, that have millions, in some cases, millions of products on their e-commerce site. And the fact of the matter is, Forrester says, this is some data that supports why this is important. 60% of customers will not return to a site where they've had a bad site search experience. In my days as a VP of e-commerce, Andy, on the consumer side, we used to say that if your site search visitors weren't converting at a rate 5 times higher than those who did not use search, there was something wrong with your site search experience. I mean, that is pure intent. When someone is searching, they're saying, hey, I want this type of product, or this product specifically, if it's a SKU number or something. So, look, this is a real challenge, and companies have to figure out, particularly those with largest product catalogs, have to figure out how to deliver a better search experience. Tee up Mr. Hoare and his search combine. Andy, what is this thing? And maybe you can give us some context on why you did it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said, because you said the standard's higher for search queries versus non, and the standard's rising. It's not lowering. People are getting more specific. The B2C influence, et cetera. The technology is getting better. So, you've got to get better at doing this. And so, I've been asked for years to take a closer look at the space, similar to what I do for the e-commerce combine. And so I thought, okay, the time has come. So this is it. It's I apply my similar methodology here. I'm sort of known for this, that I don't do the 2x2 box. I don't have leaders and losers, as I like to say. What I wanted to do was take a look at the athletes, not the decathletes. And so what I do is I look at 12 different categories, which we'll go through here in a moment. And in total, there's 48 different criteria. So this is pretty detailed. And I rate them based on whether they're a gold medalist, which is the highest, silver, bronze, or no medalist. And the good news here is it's okay not to be great in every area. And I think this is one of the flaws of the other research houses' approach, is that you're looking for decathlete, and if you're in areas, it drags down your composite score, and people look at it and go, oh, you're not a leader. Well, but you're in 5 or 6 really key areas. So that's my approach. You can see it on screen here. So let me talk to you a little bit about who was in it, what we discovered, some kind of interesting insights. So we have 2 different reports. There's the mid-market report, which targets technology buyers with $50 to $500 million in total revenue, because obviously they have different needs from the enterprise guys who are $500 million and higher, mostly focused on $1 billion. So if you're running a $15 billion business, the search needs you have are a little different from the ones if you're running a $50 million business. So there's a lot of similarity between the players here. Just to read them: Algolia, Constructor, Coveo, Group Buy, HawkSearch, Clevu. Took me a long time to figure out how to pronounce that one. I had to hear it like 5 times from those guys. It's Clevu. Spark AI, which is a company most people don't know about, and Zuvu. That was the mid-market. And then Spark wasn't a participant in the enterprise one. So we had 7 there and 8 in the others. But, there's some really impressive technologies out there. And I think the thing I took away from this is they're all a little bit different. There's a lot of differentiation within the space. What did we learn? Well, I tried to distill it down to a couple of bullet points here, but let me just talk a little bit about takeaways. First of all, we call it the search box. Everybody calls it the search box, but it really isn't the search box. And this points out why we call this the search and discovery combine. It's not just a site search combine. It's not just about search, because it turns out search isn't just about search anymore. That sounds kind of weird to say, but it's about helping guide people, which kind of crosses over into the configuration space a little bit too, which I'll talk about here in a moment. And Gen AI is becoming a competitor here, because if you go to ChatGPT and you want to find something, that's a search. If you talk to Siri, that's a search. So this has gotten to be more competitive on a lot of fronts. I sort of came to the conclusion that the vendor that you're going to want to choose is really based on your approach. Are you a tweak it person, where you want to constantly be changing things, optimizing for circumstances, or do you really want to set it and forget it approach? And isn't it interesting? This kind of parallels a lot of discussions you and I have had about like the all-in-one solution versus the composable solution. There's a bit of a parallel here. Some people want to change everything. They want to swap things in and out. They want to, turn the dial, so to speak. And other people are like, look, I just want the thing to work. And whatever your preference is going to kind of determine which approach you take. Another big insight is that there really is a difference here in the space between companies that are fundamentally commerce-centric on the search side and content-centric. I didn't fully appreciate this one until I kind of, dove in on it. And the difference is you'll find some companies that are very good at finding SKUs, for example. And it's a commerce-centric approach. Like, I'll just throw it out. Constructor actually does that. And they require clickstream data in order to do what they do. They're an AI ML approach. And what makes them particularly interesting is if you've got clickstream data, they can do some really impressive stuff. The downside is you need clickstream data, which is why it ain't the greatest solution, arguably, for long tail stuff.
Interesting.
Because you don't have a lot of clickstream data for things you haven't sold a lot of, right? Again, interesting kind of insight, right? Whereas Coveo, not to contrast the two, but Coveo is really a content-first search engine. And they're very good with, say, complex catalogs. Their heritage is content, constructor, commerce. So again, both of them bleed into the other areas. There's just two examples, but you do have kind of one or the other where you approach this. And if you're deciding on something, that's important. You want to say something?
No, good. Go ahead. This is
Okay.
interesting.
There's also kind of quirky things about this, quirky to me, about the way in which they do pricing. Some of them price based on the keystrokes. Literally, as you're typing the word in, you're getting charged, versus some charge when you complete a word. Some charge when you complete a query. And they all kind of razz each other about this, because I won't mention the company that charges based on keystrokes, but they're like, well, wait a minute. So if you're doing autocomplete, am I paying for that?
Right.
And of course, it all evens out in the end. So I don't want to make a big deal out of it. But yeah, everybody's got a different pricing approach. Hey, again, similar to the e-commerce platform, where some people are based on transactions, some people are based on, how many servers you use, whatever. Last point here on this page is about ROI. This was an interesting surprise to me, and a good one. E-commerce platforms struggle to demonstrate ROI. You know this. It can take years to prove the payoff on this. Search, fortunately, you can do it a little faster. And in some, when they choose to do A/B testing, they can choose a product or a couple of products, and they can make it work. And they can actually demonstrate an ROI on a particular product by doing an A/B test between the existing and their service pretty quickly. So fortunately for them, they're able to live a bit closer to the ROI.
Yeah, and this gets back, Andy, to the discussion about what I was saying about conversion. This comment in from Jason. Thanks. Some of the Borg. Some of the confusion here is, what does effective mean when applied to site search on a B2B site? Well, in some ways, to your point, the ROI is about the conversion. The how much sales are you driving from those products, versus not either non-site search visitors or other ways of finding the product or other site search solutions. So that's the beauty of an e-commerce experience, is you can rely on data to test.
Well, and I'm about to speak to this one too, that for some people, keyword is good enough. They don't need. In fact, that's let me move to the last slide here. So, sorry. It's an evolving model. I don't want to get into the details. This is more complicated, but most of these companies started with keyword search, which I think is effectively dead at this point, unless that's all you need. Some people just need keyword search, in which case you got what you need. Some other companies, like, just by example, Klaviyo, started with semantic search. They skipped the keyword search phase and went to semantic search. Vector search, again, this is a whole conversation we could have, is the most advanced in theory, but it's also the most expensive and compute intensive. So not everybody uses pure vector search because for those reasons, but there's kind of the emergence of a hybrid vector, which seems to be winning. But again, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. So I do like that some of these are native AI technologies. Constructor and Spark, for example, I mentioned Constructor. Spark's the same way. Spark started as an academic project, basically, and they brag about how they treat a problem as an object in a database, not a word. So for them, it's a mathematical equation, and they use machine language to give it a relevance score. And because of that, you can create your own algorithms using Spark. So again, there's kind of an interesting thing here where that might be very useful for some companies and not useful for others. If you don't want to do that tweak stuff, you want to set and forget, then Spark may not be the right choice in that scenario.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of different approaches here. So personalization, it's still the case, was surprising to me. Most companies, most search vendors still do batch. Companies like Constructor do it in real time. But some companies can't do segments of one, for example, because they're not capable of collect that information. So you just discover kind of nuances within this. That's why it's helpful to read the research, because you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses. Two final points here. I said at the beginning, it's search and discovery. A real kind of central core of the discovery part is guided selling, which, if you took a totally fresh perspective of this, you wouldn't say, wait a minute, what does search have to do with guided selling? Guided selling can take the form of a configurator. When you buy that laptop, do you want to add this memory or that memory? Well, guided selling, actually, which is increasingly powered by search vendors, is effectively that. They do Q&As. like, hey, is this what you're looking for? Are you looking for that?
Mhm.
And so they're guiding you through even facets, especially dynamic facets,
Yeah.
are a version of guided selling in a way. So it's become much more than just search at this point. And then the last thing is, and I'm fascinated by this, just the geek in me, is around synonyms. This is a big, really important issue with search, right? This thing's called a jacket, but could also be called a
Oh, yeah.
coat.
Yeah.
And so, but what else could it be called? And not all coats are jackets, not all jackets are coats. So you have like one-way and two-way synonyms. It gets really complex here, but some do these things automatically. They're like, we don't even want you to do the synonyms. We'll do it ourselves. Others are like, no, no, these words are too obscure. You've got to do them. One interesting point, group by,
Mm-hmm.
which is predicated on the Vertex engine, which is a Google engine. They
Mm-hmm.
have access to all of Google's synonyms. So they tell companies, don't do the synonyms. There's not a word Google hasn't found, right? Now, maybe that's not true in B2B,
Yeah.
but you see the point here. Some of them are like, during
Yeah.
the onboarding, we do this, stay out of it. Others say, no, no, you've got to do it all. It's too obscure. Others do a hybrid.
Well, what's fascinating in B2B is often is contextual, right? And actually, we get this comment in from Steve Harris. Thanks, Steve. He said conversational commerce is yet to be mature enough to reach customer demands, but he believes it's coming. You know, and what he's getting to there is really the context. And you look at Amazon with their Rufus search. Amazon, we've talked about that, Andy. You know, in terms of how they approach, you know, trying to solve for application, not just, you know, it's kind of to your guided selling point, some of the other points you've made here. So search isn't as straightforward as it has been. But I think a lot of what you're saying here is that it really is important for the B2B company to really understand their use case and requirements at the very beginning of this. And I know you wanted to share some kind of what this looks like also.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'll flip through these. So if you haven't seen the document itself, this is what the PDF looks like. There's a page where we talk about each one of the companies, their strengths and weaknesses. For example, like Zuvu
Yeah.
is really strong in guided selling. You know, that's an
Mhm.
area that they hang their hat on. And so that if you're doing a composite, you wouldn't really get a chance to see that. So there's
Right.
that we show the metals, but where people excel in each category. Then we look at the categories and we sort the
Yep.
vendors by the categories. This is as close as I get to comparing companies, but I think it's helpful for people to see this if this matters to you, who get the gold, the silver, the bronze. And then the last thing is I'm introducing something called the eCombine, which is I wanted to have an interactive version of this where you can see on the screen here, you can select, there are 12 categories. You can pick a minimum of 3, but you can pick 4, 5, 6, whatever. You choose it, and then you get to tell us how important each of the areas are. And within less than 2 minutes, you can get a result about a best fit match based on your specific criteria. And we use the metaphor of a
Mm-hmm.
like a gauge to tell you, is it a high match, a low match, etc. But that's coming soon, so stay tuned.
You know what I love about this, Sandy, is that it's so practical. You know, back in the day, you know, when I was a practitioner, you know, looking at the analyst reports would be helpful as a starting point, but it didn't really speak to my specific use case. What you've done here is really much more useful, and because it does rate based on what's important to me as a VP of Ecom, you know, you know, for my particular use case, and it gives me, I think, a better starting point. Yeah. Anyway, but how do people get this, Andy? How do they get a copy of this?
Best news, totally free. Just go to paradigmb2b.com. There's a combine button in the top. You can get the search combine, and right next to it is also the e-commerce combine, and it's all there. You can get whatever you want completely for free.
Fantastic. Well, Andy, we're coming up on our time. This has been a fascinating discussion and great findings, by the way. I'm sure that our community will be interested in learning more about your findings in more depth. So, folks, go ahead and download that report, the Paradigm Search B2B search and comparison, and find out for yourself. We do have a number of things coming up. I want to make sure people are aware of. Number one, we have our 2025 roundtables this spring. We have a number of additional you know, pieces of our events coming. Cleveland, Denver, Minneapolis, Charlotte, Cincinnati, LA, New York City, and St. Louis. Go to our website for look at future events. You can sign up there. There's no cost for practitioners. These are fantastic. late afternoon events. And then Andy, next week we have our 2025 Master B2B Mindshare Summit, March 12th. I think we have one seat left for a practitioner. We're
we
just
literally cannot fit any more people in that physically in that room. So
it's going to be awesome. It's going to be about 80 practitioners and another 20 or so industry experts from some of our, leading solution providers that'll be there. We're excited to have this group together. If you do have interest in joining us, let us know ASAP because we would look forward to welcoming this group, but we're running out of space. And then I want to remind folks that this podcast, our Friday 15, is available via podcast on all of your favorite channels, including Spotify, Google, Apple, our website, YouTube. Please, folks, we would ask you if you can to rate us, give us a nice rating, but rate us if you would. And that really helps us out a lot to sort of spread the word about what we're talking about here. Thank you, everyone, for listening in today. And Andy, any final words before we jump off to our next event?
Yeah, next week will be Mindshare, and then we'll probably have a wrap up of that next Friday. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. We'll talk about the key themes, what we learned, and what we heard from our community. Everyone, folks, we look forward to seeing you next time on our next Friday 15, or some of you at the summit. See you then.